What is the ego? If we lose a part of our body, such as an arm, are we still ourselves? If our internal organs are transplanted into another person's body, where does the ego lie? Going further, when we analyze the structure of the body, we see that it is made up of cells, molecules, and atoms. So, is there any ego that exists in this extremely small division? These questions are not merely biological or physical, but are also philosophical, revealing the true nature of the self. They aim to explore whether the self is a permanent, unchanging entity as many people think. This is the starting point for the discussion of the idea of no self, one of the most central and complex foundations of Buddhism. Anatta and ego. Anatta is a fundamental and important idea in Buddhism, playing a key role in understanding the nature of existence and liberation from suffering. This concept is in stark contrast to ego, or self-grasping, which is the belief that the self is an independent, unchanging, and timeless entity. In ego-based thinking, people often see themselves as a fixed entity, with a separate self and not affected by surrounding factors. This leads to clinging, attachment, and protection of the self, causing much trouble and suffering in life. People fear loss, change, and death because they think the self is the only and eternal nature of existence. In contrast, anatta is the complete negation of this concept. Buddhism teaches that there is no truly independent self. Instead, the so-called I is just an aggregate of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, physical and mental factors. These factors are constantly changing and nothing is fixed or permanent. Anatta holds that all phenomena are dependently arisen, meaning that they exist based on complex conditions and interactions, and that no independent entity exists. This means that the self does not have a fixed and eternal nature, but is always changing, depending on the surrounding circumstances and conditions. Understanding anatta helps people escape from clinging and attachment to the self, thereby liberating them from the cycle of birth and death, and reaching nirvana, the ultimate state of liberation in Buddhism. Anatta is not only a philosophical concept, but also a practical path, leading people to a profound understanding of the nature of existence and liberation from all suffering. Distinguishing between non-self and impermanence. In Buddhism, the two concepts of non-self and impermanence play an important role in understanding the nature of existence and reality. Impermanence. Impermanence, also known as anicca in Pali, refers to the constant and unceasing change of all phenomena, including people and things. Impermanence affirms that everything in the universe is impermanent, always changing over time. From the human body, thoughts, emotions, to events, surrounding scenes, all go through the process of birth, existence, change, and death. Birth, existence, change, and death. The awareness of impermanence helps us understand that nothing lasts forever. Everything has a beginning and an end. This helps people reduce their attachment and fear of change and death. Anatta. Anatta, or anatta in Pali, is a deeper concept that emphasizes that there is no independent, unchanging entity called I or self that exists in a person or any phenomenon. According to this view, what is called I is just a combination of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, physical and mental factors. These factors are constantly changing and interdependent, with nothing of a fixed or autonomous nature. Anatta denies the existence of a separate, permanent entity. Instead, all phenomena are dependently arisen. That is, they arise due to interacting conditions and causes. The difference between anatta and impermanence. Impermanence focuses on the change and impermanence of all phenomena, emphasizing that nothing is fixed or permanent. Meanwhile, anatta goes further by asserting that not only are all phenomena changing, but there is also no independent entity behind these phenomena. Anatta sees people and things not as fixed entities, but as collections of interdependent factors, always changing and interdependent. Realizing and practicing anatta and impermanence help people to escape from clinging to the self and impermanent phenomena, thereby achieving liberation and peace. These are important steps on the path of practice to reach nirvana in Buddhism. What are the five aggregates? The five aggregates. In the Buddha's teachings, the concept of the five aggregates, pancha khanda, is a central element in understanding selflessness and the true nature of existence. The five aggregates include form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, each of which contributes to the way we perceive and experience the world, but none of them contains a true self. Form, rupa. The aggregate of form represents the material element, which includes our physical body and all other physical phenomena. It includes what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. The Buddha taught that form has no independent nature. It is always changing and cannot be completely controlled, and therefore cannot be the real self. Feeling, Vedana. The aggregate of feeling refers to the feelings or sensations, including the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings that we experience. These feelings arise and disappear continuously, depending on conditions and circumstances, without stability or constancy, and therefore cannot be the self. Perception, sanya. Perception is the ability to recognize and distinguish objects, including memory and recognition. Perception allows us to perceive and understand the world around us, but it is also constantly changing with time and experience, without stability or independence. Sankhara. Sankhara includes all mental states, volitions, and conditioned actions. These are mental reactions and actions conditioned by external and internal factors. Since sankhara is constantly changing and dependent on these conditions, it cannot be an unchanging self. Consciousness, vijnana. Consciousness aggregate is the faculty of perception and understanding, including perception of sensations, perceptions, and mental formations. Consciousness is the basis of consciousness, but it is also constantly changing and does not have an autonomous or unchanging nature, the non-self of the five aggregates. The Buddha taught that each of the five aggregates is devoid of a real self. Together, these aggregates create the experience of self, but the self is an illusion, with no independent or permanent entity. Realizing the non-self of the five aggregates helps us understand that the self is simply a collection of interdependent, ever-changing factors. A deep understanding of the five aggregates and their non-self is the key to liberation from suffering and the attainment of nirvana. It helps one to be free from clinging to the self and the illusion of permanent existence, thereby achieving the ultimate peace and liberation in Buddhism. Anatta and science. Modern scientific discoveries have contributed to the consolidation and demonstration of the Buddhist concept of anatta by showing that no cell in the body or unit in the human mind can be completely self-sufficient. This is consistent with the idea that there is no truly independent self. Body organization. The human body is made up of billions of cells, each performing specific functions and closely linked together to maintain life. No cell has absolute control or can exist independently without the support of other cells. Every cell in the body depends on its environment and interacts with other cells to perform physiological functions. Mind and the nervous system. Similarly, the human mind is not a single entity, but rather the result of the complex activity of billions of neurons in the brain. Neuroscientists have discovered that thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are the result of interactions between neurons and neural networks. No single neuron can claim to be the master of the mind. Instead, consciousness and mental states are the result of the coordinated activity of the entire nervous system. Networking and heterogeneity. The human brain is like an orchestra, where each musician, neuron, plays a specific role, and there is no conductor who controls the whole. All neurons work together to create perception and consciousness. This demonstrates that no entity or unit can exist or function independently without depending on other factors. Law of attraction and perception. Scientific discoveries also show that our experiences and perceptions are not the result of a single entity, but rather the product of the interaction of many different factors. For example, chemical reactions in the brain, living environment, and personal experiences all play important roles in shaping thoughts and actions. Concept of self. Modern science helps to reinforce the view that the self is an illusory concept, created by the activities and interactions of many complex factors. There is no permanent and unchanging entity that dominates the entire body or mind. Everything is a combination and interdependence, constantly changing with time and conditions. Practicing Anatta. Practicing Anatta is a profound and subtle process, not a complete denial of the self, but rather a renunciation of the belief in an independent and unchanging self. This requires awareness and a change in the way we perceive ourselves and the world around us. Realizing the self. The first step in practicing selflessness is to clearly realize that the self that we usually think of as an independent, unchanging entity is actually an illusion. This self is made up of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, and is constantly changing with time and circumstances. Understanding that the self is not a fixed entity helps us reduce our clinging and fear of ourselves. Letting go of the belief in an independent self. Once we have understood the nature of egolessness, we need to practice letting go of the belief in an independent self. This does not mean denying the existence of the self, but rather realizing that the self does not exist independently and unchangingly. Letting go of this belief helps us to be free from the troubles and sufferings caused by ego clinging, opening the way to peace and liberation. Focus on helping and serving others. An important part of practicing selflessness is to direct our mind and actions towards helping and serving others. As we shift our attention from ourselves to others, we gradually break our attachment to the self. Acting for the benefit of others not only brings them joy and happiness, but also helps us develop compassion, altruism, and reduce selfishness. Developing compassion and altruism. Practicing selflessness encourages us to develop compassion and altruism. When we are free from ego, we can easily empathize and love others. This helps build a harmonious community and society where people support and help each other. Application in daily life. The practice of selflessness is not limited to meditation or spiritual activities, but should be applied in daily life. Every action, thought, and word can be an opportunity to practice selflessness. When faced with difficulties, we can remind ourselves that these challenges are opportunities to practice patience and compassion. Benefits of practicing Anatta. Practicing Anatta brings many great benefits. It helps us reduce our worries and suffering and live a more peaceful and meaningful life. At the same time, it also contributes to creating a harmonious and compassionate living environment where everyone can grow and prosper together. In general, practicing Anatta is a long path and requires patience, deep awareness, and compassion. However, the benefits it brings to individuals and society are immense, helping us achieve true peace and liberation. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video on the topic of selflessness. I hope that the sharing in the video has brought you deep and meaningful insights into the Buddhist concept of selflessness. If this video has helped you realize the nature of the self and helped you find peace and happiness in life, that is our greatest joy and motivation. We hope that you will continue to accompany us in the next videos, where we will explore together the profound philosophies and meanings of life. Once again, thank you very much for your support and interest. We wish you peace and success on your path to enlightenment and liberation. See you in the next videos.